I was mocked by the whole class for being ugly. They spread ridiculous gossip about me and the new transfer student all over the place. Some even went up to him and asked, "How was it? All the same with the lights off, isn't it?" I was the universally acknowledged ugly girl of the grade. On April Fool's Day, my secret crush diary was exposed to the class and became a laughingstock for everyone. Between classes, when I came back from the toilet, Li Chao, the bully in our class, had rummaged through my school bag and found the diary. He stood on the podium and read it out in a deadpan tone in front of the whole class. "Pei Chuan, when will I be able to walk up to you openly and tell you that?" He paused mischievously. Just as I rushed over, blushing furiously, to grab the diary, he blurted out the rest of the sentence. "I really like you." An uproar broke out. A flood of whispers and unwarranted malice swept over me, threatening to drown me completely. Pei Chuan was the campus heartthrob of our school. The so-called model student, good-looking, well-built, and from a wealthy family. And I was the least popular girl in the class. All because I was ugly. God, should we chip in to buy her a mirror? How dare she like Pei Chuan? Everyone was eating it up, jeering and gossiping non-stop. Pei Chuan's girlfriend would at least be a campus belle or class representative. How could she ever compare? Looking that ugly and still named Jovi true to her name, flirting shamelessly in public and acting two-faced in private. The remarks got increasingly vicious. The diary was tossed around by a bunch of bullies, and I couldn't get my hands on it at all. The most humiliating part was that Pei Chuan was there too. He sat quietly by the window, dragged into this mess because of me. Yet, even with all the gossip swirling around him, he only frowned slightly and stepped in to save me from embarrassment. "Cut it out, stop talking." The classmates jumped to defend him. "Pei Chuan, you're way too nice letting this pathetic girl cling to you like that. Seriously, if I were you, I'd be disgusted to death by her crush." I stood in the middle of the classroom, nailed to the pillory of shame because of that diary. After being passed around, the diary ended up back in Li Chao's hands. He held it high and kept reading aloud. "Nuff." My body was trembling uncontrollably, my eyes stinging with tears, but I bit down hard to hold them back from falling in front of everyone. My voice shook violently with emotion. "I know I'm not good looking, but so what? Does being ugly mean I don't even have the right to like someone?" "Yeah, it does." Someone answered me. It was Gan Yu, the class beauty. She sat in her seat, tilted her head up to look at me. "Being ugly isn't your fault, but liking Pei Chuan is just overestimating yourself." With that, she shot Pei Chuan a glance, then turned back to me. "After all, Pei Chuan must feel humiliated to be liked by someone like you." The whole class burst into laughter. Everyone agreed with Gan Yu. Class was about to start, but Li Chao kept going. Suddenly, someone snatched the diary from his hand and slammed it down on my desk. "Shut up, you're so noisy." The classroom fell completely silent. It was He Chi, the new transfer student. On his first day at school, He Chi had spent the entire day lying on his desk, asleep from start to finish. The second day, the passing dean had woken him up, and he called the dean an idiot right in front of the whole class. The third day, he'd beaten up 2 boys who disturbed his nap 3 times over. Today was his 4th day as a transfer student. Li Chao didn't dare to mess with him. He slunk back to his seat, tail between his legs. How ridiculous. The guy who'd just led the bullying against me was now slumping in his seat, not daring to utter a single word of protest. And for the record, Li Chao wasn't exactly a looker himself. Dark-skinned, with small eyes and high cheekbones. Last time during a class activity, he'd mocked his own looks on stage, and some classmates had comforted him. "Don't say that looks aren't everything, you know." But those very same people were the ones gossiping about me today, saying, "No wonder the whole class can't stand her, she is just so ugly." After school, I lingered on purpose, then slung my school bag over my shoulder, and headed to the quiet corner behind the teaching building. I was waiting for Pei Chuan. During the break before school ended, he'd walked past my desk and tossed me a note. Unfolding it, his neat, forceful handwriting read, "Meet me behind the teaching building after school." I waited for about 10 minutes before he finally showed up. "Pei Chuan, ... I bit my lip and whispered an apology. "I'm sorry about the diary incident, Having a crush was supposed to be my own little secret. But today, with the diary being passed around like a joke, I'd really put him in an awkward position. It's fine. Pei Chuan smiled gently. They were bullying you. It's not your fault. Joe Wu. He changed the subject abruptly, leaning in close enough that I could feel his breath fanning my ear. Was it true? What you wrote in the diary? Having the boy I liked bring up such an embarrassing thing in public made me so nervous I could barely speak. It was ... He suddenly laughed. I think you're kind of cute, different from all the other girls. I froze completely. I didn't want to read too much into it, but the softness in Pei Chuan's eyes as he smiled at me was impossible to ignore. His warm palm rested on my shoulder, and he inched closer, narrowing the gap between us. I vaguely sensed what was about to happen, but my body went rigid, and I didn't know how to react. His breath grew hotter and closer. Suddenly, a strong hand pressed down hard on the back of my head, forcing me to bend forward. Pei Chuan's cold laugh rang out above me, nothing like his usual gentle tone filled with contempt and mockery. Joe Wu, you didn't actually think I'd kiss you, did you? Go look in a mirror and check out that face of yours. Just looking at you makes me sick. His sneering words pierced my ears and my body went stiff as ice. Pei Chuan's voice merged with all the malicious remarks I'd endured that day, each word stabbing straight into my heart. I couldn't believe it, the boy standing in front of me, his face twisted with disdain. His words sharp and cruel, was the same person I quietly liked for so long. The Pei Chuan who never made anyone feel embarrassed. Pei Chuan pressed his hand down harder on my head, trying to force me to my knees on the ground. Joe Wu, kneel down and polish my shoes clean, and I'll go out with you. How about that? His grip was so tight I couldn't break free, no matter how hard I struggled. Just then, a lazy, indifferent voice cut through the air. Who the hell did I piss off to get woken up from my nap? You almost made me throw up from disgust. Before I knew it, something heavy came hurtling toward us. I heard Pei Chuan grunt in pain, and the hand on my head loosened instantly. I looked up in panic and saw Hikai's face. He walked up to Pei Chuan, bent down to pick up his extremely heavy school bag, grabbed Pei Chuan by the collar with one hand, and said, "If you don't like her, just say so. Does humiliating her make you feel like a big man?" The boy's fingers were long and strong, the veins on the back of his hand bulging slightly from how hard he was gripping the collar. He spat on the ground, then swung his fist and punched Pei Chuan square in the face. Bastard! The two of them started fighting. But Pei Chuan wasn't good at fighting at all. He was basically being pinned to the ground and beaten, with no way to fight back. In just a few minutes, Pei Chuan was covering his head and begging for mercy, then scrambled to his feet and fled in a hurry. I clutched the hem of my clothes tightly, still in a daze, until Hikai's voice sounded beside my ear. "You gonna keep staring?" He slung his school bag over one shoulder with one hand. "Go home." With that, he didn't even bother to look at me. He just turned around and walked away. "Thank you, ... I whispered. Hikai's footsteps paused for a second. He didn't say anything, but he waved his hand in reply. On the way home, my mind was completely blank. The only thing replaying in my head was Pei Chuan's completely unfamiliar face. The boy who had occupied half my adolescence, the gentlemanly campus heartthrob, was dead to me, right then and there. "You got something to say?" Lost in my thoughts, I was jolted back to reality by a familiar voice ahead of me. I looked up. It was He. He had his school bag slung over his shoulder, and he turned to look at me, one eyebrow raised in that signature cocky way of his. I froze for a second before realizing He was standing right in front of the entrance to my apartment building. It seemed I'd been following him all the way home without even noticing. Afraid he'd get the wrong idea, I quickly pointed at the building door. "I live in this building too." He blinked in surprise, but didn't say anything. The elevator doors opened, and He stepped inside first. "What floor?" 12th, thank you." But even before I'd finished speaking, he'd already pressed the button for the 12th floor. I suddenly remembered at breakfast that morning, my mom had mentioned that a new boy had moved into the apartment opposite ours yesterday, and he went to the same school as me. It was He. His place seemed empty though. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. He kicked the door in frustration, then pulled out a cigarette and lit it, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Wanting to thank him properly, I asked softly, "Would you like to come into my house for a while?" Hichi was silent for 2 seconds. "You gonna feed me?" When I nodded, he stubbered out his cigarette immediately. "Thanks." It was a rainy morning. As soon as I stepped out of the door, I saw Hichi standing there. He wasn't wearing the school uniform, just a black tracksuit, and he was waiting for me at the entrance. "Let's go." The two of us stood in the elevator in complete silence for the dozens of seconds it took to go down to the first floor. When the door opened, the rain outside had gotten much heavier. Hichi didn't have an umbrella. I was just about to take out the umbrella cover when he pulled the hood of his sweatshirt over his head and walked straight into the rain. I quickly opened the umbrella and ran after him. The umbrella was big enough for 2 people with plenty of room to spare. Hichi pushed his hood down. "Thanks." Then he took the umbrella handle from me without being asked, holding it over both of us. We were almost at school when Hichi pulled his hood back up, walked into the rain, and said he was going to buy something. But I walked to the school gate alone, holding the umbrella, and ran straight into Pei Xuan and Gan Yu. Gan Yu was piggybacking on Pei Xuan's back, holding the umbrella over both of them. Rain dripped down the tip of the umbrella, then gathered into small streams that ran down the umbrella ribs and fell to the ground. There was a puddle at the school gate, filled with rainwater. Pei Xuan carefully stepped on the bricks placed in the puddle to keep his balance as he carried her, afraid that the girl on his back would get her shoes wet. It was raining, so there was no dean patrolling the area, and the security guard was hiding from the rain in his booth. Pei Xuan didn't put Gan Yu down until they reached the school gate. She didn't hurry to go inside. Instead, she turned around and looked straight at me. "Joe Wu, Pei Xuan and I got together last night." It sounded like a declaration of ownership. I didn't know how to react. I forced a smile, which felt stiff on my face. "Oh, congratulations." Gan Yu suddenly laughed. She sized me up from head to toe, glanced down at her own white shoes, then tugged on the boy beside her, and acted coquettishly. "Pei Xuan, my shoes are dirty. Why don't you ask your little dog to polish them for me too?" Her cruel words hit me like a bolt of lightning. He'd told her about what happened last night. Gan Yu's mocking continued, but I tuned her out, my fingers tightening around the umbrella handle until my knuckles turned white. "Gan Yu," I said coldly, "when your boyfriend was telling you about last night, did he forget to mention that he got beaten up like a dog?" The smile froze on Pei Chuan's face. I was actually extremely embarrassed, but my last shred of self-respect forced me to straighten my back and bite back. Now that I think about it, I must have been blind to write half a diary about someone like you. I never thought liking someone was something to be ashamed of, but now, Pei Chuan, it's really humiliating to have ever liked someone like you. Gan Yu stared at me in shock for 2 seconds, then started hurling insults at me. I tried my best to ignore her harsh words and turned to walk into the school gate. There were only 2 bricks placed crookily in the puddle. I'd never been good at balancing. Stepping on those bricks would probably make me fall. It would be better to just walk through the water. Gan Yu's taunting voice came from behind me. "Joe Wu, watch your weight, don't break the bricks." The students passing by laughed out loud. I gripped the umbrella handle so tightly that the veins on the back of my hand popped out. I was about to step into the water when someone beat me to it. A tall figure in black walked up to me, turned his back to me, and squatted down. "Get on." When I didn't move, Hichi frowned, as if his patience had run out. And then he just reached out and pulled me onto his back. "Don't." The words were barely out of my mouth when he stood up with me on his back. I wasn't exactly skinny, but I wasn't overly heavy either. But Hichi carried me like I weighed nothing at all. He stepped steadily on the bricks in the puddle, then finally set me down on the dry pavement on the other side. "Let's go." He took the umbrella from my hand naturally and held it over us. A lot of students had seen Hichi carry me across the puddle. The story spread like wildfire in our class first thing in the morning. Hichi and I instantly became the center of everyone's gossip, and the rumors got more and more ridiculous by the minute. First, they mocked me for being ugly and manipulative, saying I had a face that looked like a train wreck, but I was a master at leading guys on. Then, they started making fun of Hichi behind his back. "He'll go for anyone, huh? Not exactly picky with his taste." Even worse, Some guys went up to He-Chi during the break and asked him, "Come on, tell us the truth, what was Joe Woo like? Actually, it's all the same with the lights off, right?" And then, He-Chi punched one of them right in the temple. The guy fell to the ground and couldn't get up for ages. I thought the rumors would die down after that. But on the contrary, the gossip got even more intense. Even students from other classes heard about it, that there was an ugly, attention-seeking flirt in Class 3, Grade 12. I became a celebrity in the school. During breaks, students from other classes would even gather by the back window of our classroom, pointing at me and snickering behind their hands. But I just gritted my teeth and told myself to hold on a little longer. If I could get into my dream university next year, I could leave all these humiliating rumors behind forever. But a week later, the gossip about He-Chi and me reached its peak. In the afternoon, the class next door had pay class. He-Chi skipped a self-study period to go play basketball with them. During the break, I went to the back of the classroom to fill a plastic bottle with water from the water dispenser. Since I was on duty that day, I noticed that the blackboard at the back hadn't been erased yet. So I put my water bottle on Hikai's desk in the last row. After I finished erasing the blackboard, I turned around and found He-Chi had come back at some point, and my water bottle was in his hand. He-Chi had already drunk half of it. Some sharp-eyed classmates spotted it and started yelling, making a big deal out of it, saying that He-Chi drinking from my bottle was basically an indirect kiss. It was such a childish, tacky thing to make a fuss about, but the whole class joined in, watching the scene with glee. He-Chi frowned, tossed the water bottle into his desk drawer, turned to me and said, "I'll buy you a new one after class." "It's fine, really, .. I said, clutching the blackboard eraser tightly. But the mocking whispers in my ears just wouldn't stop. "Well, they've already slept together, an indirect kiss is nothing." Not kissing in front of the whole class was actually pretty restrained of them. The scene from a few days ago flashed before my eyes again. My diary had been found, and just because I'd quietly liked a boy during my adolescence, I'd been labelled a slut, accused of not knowing my place, of leading guys on, I was on the verge of breaking down, and then someone poured more fuel on the fire. Ganyu walked up to me and praised me in a sarcastic tone. "Wow, you're something else looking like that, and you still managed to wrap the new transfer student around your little finger." Impressive. Chuan stood right beside her, saying nothing, but the look he gave me was full of contempt. "Joe Woo, show us your tricks, huh?" Ganyu glanced around at the other students, then said, "Why don't you kiss him right here in front of us?" Before I could react, she suddenly gave me a hard push from behind. I stumbled forward and crashed into He-Chi. He reached out instinctively to catch me, and I fell straight into his arms. I lost my balance and leaned forward, my lips brushing against his ... The classroom went completely silent for 2 seconds, then erupted into deafening catcalls and cheers. But the only thought in my mind was, his lips are so soft. I stumbled back in a panic, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of my chest. Everyone was watching the show, waiting to see Hikai's reaction. I was watching him too. In those 2 short seconds, a million possible scenarios flashed through my mind, but none of them happened. He-Chi just froze for a second, and pulled out a tissue and pressed it to my lips, wiping them casually. He smiled. "Guess I got the better end of that deal." With that, he turned around, grabbed the collar of the boy who'd been cheering the loudest and said, "You love spreading rumors so much, huh?" He practically dragged the boy to door. "Let's go talk in the boys' bathroom. I've got some rumors I want to share with you too." Before anyone could say a word, He-Chi hauled the boy out of the classroom. The classroom fell dead silent. No one could believe what had just happened. I stood by Hikai's desk, my mind replaying the scene in slow motion. He-Chi had grabbed a tissue and wiped my lips carelessly, his tone light and teasing, but from where I stood, I could see the tips of his ears turning bright red. Half a minute before the class bell rang, He-Chi and the boy walked back into the classroom, one after the other. If you looked closely, you could see a faint red mark under the boy's nose that he hadn't bothered to wipe off properly. He-Chi walked past my desk, put a brand new bottle of mineral water on it, and said, "Here for the one I drank." I didn't even have time to say thank you before He-Chi walked away. That night, I closed my textbook at almost 11 o'clock. After washing up, I changed into my pajamas and climbed into bed. I scrolled through short videos on my phone and accidentally came across a new post from the hand fetish blogger I'd been following for ages. The caption read, "Fuck, just lost my first kiss." The comment section was a mess, with fans from all over the place, speculating and gossiping. But he only replied to one comment. Someone had asked, "Bro, what's she like? Is she an absolute knockout?" He replied twice in a row. "She's not a traditional beauty, but I think she's really pretty. She's a really special girl." In just 2 hours, hundreds of comments have been posted under his reply, all the fans crying and wailing. "Oh no, bro's got a crush." Bro never replies to comments with more than 3 words, and this time he wrote 25. It's true love. I liked the post out of habit. But then I found myself staring at my phone, lost in thought. Come to think of it ... I'd also lost my first kiss today, completely by accident. And it was with Chi. Recently, the school organized a New Year's gala. Each class had to sign up for at least 2 programs. When it came to choosing a solo performance, I hesitated for a long time before raising my hand and saying I could play a piano solo. As soon as the words left my mouth, the class burst into laughter. Someone mocked me publicly. "Don't be ridiculous. Are you trying to embarrass the whole class by going up on stage?" Everyone knows Gan Yu just passed her grade 8 piano exam. If anyone is going to perform, it should be her. Listen to us, don't make our class look bad. Drowned out by all the familiar jeers. Gan Yu spoke up at just the right moment. "Teacher, I did just pass my grade 8 exam. Then I'll sign up for the piano performance. I'll work hard to bring honor to our class." I wasn't the kind of person who liked to fight for things, but at that moment I still spoke up. "Teacher, I've passed my grade 10 piano exam." I clutched the hem of my clothes tightly under the desk. I want to contribute to the class too. Besides, I wanted to go up on that stage and play for my mum, because the night of the gala was also my mum's birthday. The classroom erupted in an uproar. Some people looked shocked. Others' skeptical whispers of gossip filled the air. But I didn't care. I just stared at the teacher on the podium, waiting for her decision. To my disappointment, the teacher still turned me down gently. "Jo Woo, I understand how eager you are to bring honor to our class, but Gan Yu is more suitable for this performance." She dismissed my request with a casual wave of her hand, then looked past the students in the front row to me. "Maybe next time I'll definitely choose you. More suitable." Did she mean that Gan Yu's face was more suitable? I even heard the students in the seat in front of me whispering, "Good thing she didn't get chosen. If she went up on stage, she would have embarrassed the whole class." Exactly so. What if she passed grade 10? How dare she compare herself to Gan Yu? I took a deep breath and said nothing. But after class, I went straight to the grade director's office. The grade director was notoriously strict but also fair. After I explained the situation clearly to him, he told me to go back to class first, then called my head teacher into his office. I didn't know what they talked about, but after that class, my head teacher walked back into the classroom with a dark, stormy expression on her face, then suddenly announced that I would be the one to perform at the gala instead. The students started whispering and gossiping, but no one dared to ask why. In the 3rd period, that afternoon English class, Gan Yu and another girl in our class asked for leave to go to the infirmary, saying they had stomachaches. They didn't come back for the entire class. After class, I rubbed my sore eyes and stood up to go to the bathroom. As soon as I reached the door, someone suddenly grabbed me and pulled me inside. Several girls pushed me into the farthest stall in the bathroom. In the narrow, cramped space, I was cornered against the wall, and standing in front of me was Gan Yu, holding a can of silly string. The other 2 girls held me tightly in place as the silly string sprayed all over my school uniform and hair. The smell was sharp and acrid, the texture sticky and gross. "Looks like our Miss Jo is going to perform on stage. We're here to celebrate in advance." With that, someone grabbed the collar at the back of my neck and sprayed the silly string down the inside of my shirt. The inside of my clothes was completely soaked and sticky. The pungent smell filled my nostrils, making me feel nauseous. The girls couldn't hold me properly in the cramped stall. I summoned all my strength to push them away, then snatched the can of silly string from Gan Yu's hand. Before any of them could react, I pointed the can at Gan Yu's head and sprayed it like crazy. She'd always been obsessed with her long black hair. Usually, she'd make a huge fuss in class if she even lost a single strand. But today, her ponytail was covered in a thick layer of colorful foam. She screamed in shock and anger. The two girls tackled me again, grabbed the silly string from my hand, and sprayed it all over my hair and clothes once more. All I could hear was the sharp, hissing sound of the silly string being sprayed, mixed with Ganyu's furious shouts and insults. I don't know how many minutes passed. Someone grabbed me by the hair and dragged me out of the stall. The girls' bathroom was empty except for us. Ganyu was pulling my hair so hard that her face was flushed red with rage. "You country bumpkin, do you know how much I spend on my hair treatments? You think you can afford to pay for this damage?" She kept pulling my hair, and on the other side, a bucket of cold water that had been prepared in advance was dumped all over me. Cold, ... The tap water, mixed with the smell of bleach, was so cold it made me shiver uncontrollably. My clothes were soaked through, clinging to my body, cold and sticky. Ganyu pulled out her phone with a smile, took a photo of me and sent it to someone. A moment later, her phone vibrated. Ganyu opened the voice message, and Peichuan's voice rang out, short and cold. "Disgusting." Ganyu giggled, then played the second voice message. Unlike the first one, which was full of disgust, Peichuan's tone was soft and gentle this time, as he whispered, "Don't touch the cold water, you'll catch a cold." At that moment, sunlight filtered through the leaves outside the window, dappling my body with light and shadow. But I only felt a cold, bitter chill in my heart. A wave of revulsion washed over me. I felt disgusted with myself for ever liking a boy like that. After spraying me with silly string, drenching me with cold water, and humiliating me with Peichuan's help, Ganyu left, perfectly satisfied. Before she went, she even told me that she was letting me, the ugly duckling, have the gala performance spot out of the goodness of her heart. I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in her eyes. I looked utterly wretched. So, the moment they turned around to leave, I picked up the bucket from the floor and dumped the remaining half of the cold water right over Ganyu's head. Splash! Ganyu was soaked to the skin, just like me. "You!" She spun around to face me, water streaming down the hem of her clothes. "Are you insane?" She glared at me, her face contorted with rage. Just then, the class bell rang. The other girls pulled her back, urging her, "We've caused enough of a scene here. Let's go back to class first." Ganyu was dragged away, storming off in a huff. Her hair was caked with colorful foam, and now she was soaked to the bone. There was no way she'd go back to class. Neither would I. The last period happened to be P class. For the first time in my life, I skipped class and went straight home. No one was there. I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the shower, and scrubbed my skin over and over again. But I knew I would never forget that sticky, clawing feeling on my skin for as long as I lived. I had just stepped out of the bathroom when someone started pounding on the door. I didn't have time to change clothes, so I wrapped my bathrobe tightly around me and went to open it. It was He-Chi. He was leaning against the doorframe with one hand, slightly out of breath. When he saw me, He-Chi visibly relaxed. His eyes flicked down, lingering on my bathrobe-clad figure. He frowned. "Why did you leave school early without a word?" That's when I remembered I'd been in such a hurry to escape P class that I'd forgotten to tell him. He-Kai's house was always empty. Every night, he'd come over to my place for dinner. In return, he'd promised my mom that he'd walk to and from school with me every day and look out for me at school. And he had kept that promise. I didn't know how to explain everything to him. As we stood there in silence, his eyes suddenly fell on the pile of dirty clothes in the laundry basket. "Silly string?" He-Chi scowled. "Did that idiot come after you again?" He was referring to Ganyu, of course. When I didn't say anything, he turned around to leave. Panic flared in my chest, and I rushed to stop him. In my haste, I grabbed his hand. I snatched the silly string from her and sprayed her with it. She dumped half a bucket of cold water on me, so I dumped half a bucket on her, too. He-Chi paused, turned back to look at me, and suddenly smiled. "Not bad for you." He held out his hand to me. Phone. I didn't know what he was up to, but I handed it to him anyway. My phone had no password. He unlocked it, tapped away at the screen for a moment, then handed it back to me. There was a new contact in my WeChat. The note read, "Freeloader." He glanced at me. "Text me if you ever need anything from now on." He took a step back, turned around, and headed for his own apartment door. "Call me when dinner's ready." I clutched my phone, lost in thought. Okay. Chi and my mom had already become dining buddies. It was just me and my mom at home, and the house was always quiet. I was a quiet person who didn't eat much, and my mom was an amazing cook, but there was never anyone to appreciate her food until Chi started coming over for meals. That boy could eat like a horse. No matter what my mom cooked, he'd polish off 3 bowls of rice without fail. Chi and I had only just added each other on WeChat, but he and my mom were already calling each other godson and godmother. After days of anticipation, the night of the gala finally arrived. But when I was getting ready backstage, something unexpected happened. To match the formal dress I was going to wear for my performance, I'd specially prepared a pair of shoes with a low heel. I was sitting on a chair, slipping them on, when I suddenly stepped on something sharp. The pointy object pierced the sole of my foot, and the pain was so intense that I nearly fell off the chair. It hurt so much. I looked down, and my shoe was filled with blood. There was a tiny shard of glass embedded in the pad of my foot. I sat on the chair, biting my lips so hard that I could taste blood, and forced myself to pull the glass shard out. I kept those shoes in my closet the entire time. How did a piece of glass end up inside them? Instinctively, I thought of Gan Yu. That there was no time to gather evidence. The gala was about to start any minute. I had to quickly wipe the blood around the wound with a tissue. But when I turned to change into my formal dress, I realized someone had cut it to shreds. The hem of the dress I painstakingly prepared for the gala was torn into a huge gaping hole at the chest, and I had absolutely no time to find another outfit to wear. The gala began. I waited backstage, my heart pounding, until the host finally called my name. I forced myself to walk onto the stage, gritting my teeth against the searing pain in my foot. No matter how hard I tried to hide it, I still had a noticeable limp. I stared silently out at the audience below. I couldn't hear the whispers very clearly, but I could vaguely make out the mocking expressions on their faces. All the performers before me, whether boys or girls, had been dressed beautifully. All except me. I was never considered good-looking to begin with. And now here I was, performing a piano solo in a baggy school uniform. To make matters worse, before I'd changed my clothes, I'd spent a long time styling my hair into an elegant updo, which looked completely ridiculous with my loose-fitting navy blue school uniform. And then there was the way I'd walked onto the stage limping awkwardly. I took a deep breath, steeled myself against the pressure and the nerves, and bowed to the audience. Then I sat down at the piano. I forced all distracting thoughts out of my mind and began to play. This performance was for my mom, and it was for me too. I lost myself in the music, temporarily forgetting all the humiliation and mockery I'd endured. I blocked out all the cruel, unkind voices. When the last note faded away, I realized that the audience was completely silent. I snapped back to reality, pulled my hands away from the keys, and stood up. Suddenly, a faint round of applause broke out from the audience. 2 people stood up, clapping enthusiastically. I looked down into the crowd, and my eyes met my mom's. And I saw Chi too. 2 seconds later, the applause erupted into a thunderous roar, as if everyone in the audience was clapping for me. The sound of their applause washed over me like a tide. I bowed deeply, then limped back off the stage. My mom was waiting for me backstage. She didn't mention how awkward and wretched I looked when I walked onto the stage. The moment I whispered happy birthday to her, she pulled me into a hug and said, "You will always be Mom's pride and joy, no matter what." Yes, in her eyes, I was never some ugly girl, I was her precious daughter. My mom had to get back to work, so she left after that, and didn't stay for the rest of the gala. To keep her from worrying, I lied and told her that my leg had just fallen asleep, which was why I'd been limping. But when I slowly made my way back to my classroom, Chi immediately noticed that something was wrong. "What happened to your foot?" He frowned, his gaze dropping to my feet. "There's blood on your shoe." I had no choice but to tell him the truth. Chi didn't say a word. He helped me sit down in a seat at the back of the classroom, then left. When he came back, he was holding a bottle of antiseptic and a roll of gauze that he'd clearly gone out to buy from the shop outside the school gate. Take off your shoe. He knelt down in front of me, the bottle of antiseptic in his hand. It's fine, really. I reached out to take the antiseptic from him, but he pulled his hand away. Without a word, he gently slipped my shoe off my foot. I shifted uncomfortably, pulling my foot back slightly. His fingers brushed against my ankle, and I heard him mutter softly, "If those idiots see this, they'll just start spreading more rumors about us anyway." He didn't even look up. They spread rumors about us, even when there's nothing to see. Thankfully, everyone's attention was focused on the performances happening on stage, and no one noticed me and Hichi at the back of the classroom. Hichi knelt in front of me, the stage lights casting a soft halo around the top of his head. I was staring at him, lost in thought, when I suddenly heard his voice soft, barely a whisper. He said, "You looked really beautiful up there just now." "Thank you." I blurted out the words automatically, then realized something was off. He'd said I looked beautiful, not that I played beautifully. I was about to ask him what he meant, but Hichi had already packed up the antiseptic and gauze and stood up to throw away the used cotton pads. I slipped my shoe back on and stood up, only to overhear some of my classmates gossiping about me. I know this sounds crazy, but when I watched Jo Woo play the piano on stage just now, I actually thought she looked kind of pretty. Right? Me too. It's so weird. People are really strange sometimes. In the past, I'd been mocked and ridiculed by my classmates for my looks. I wasn't the only plain-looking girl in the class, and I wasn't the only one who'd had a crush on Pei Chuan either. I studied hard and was always willing to help others, but everyone still seemed to dislike me. It was as if joining in the mocking of me was the unwritten rule for fitting in with the class. But after the gala, some of my classmates started talking privately about how, when they'd seen me playing the piano on stage in my baggy school uniform, with the stage lights shining on my profile, I'd actually looked kind of pretty. Once that rumor started spreading, it seemed like a lot of my classmates didn't hate me as much anymore. But I still didn't have many friends, except for Hichi. He was a cold, straightforward person who didn't like hanging out with the other boys in our class. Between classes, he either slept at his desk or went to play basketball with the boys from the next class. We were two lonely neighbors with no friends, walking to and from school together every day. The rumors about us spread like wildfire, wave after wave. But eventually, we really did become good friends. Still, even though we'd been neighbors for so long, I'd never once seen his parents. Hichi said that his parents were always too busy with their business to have time for him, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night. My mom adored Hichi, and she kept nagging me to help him catch up with his schoolwork. In front of my mom, I hesitantly asked Hichi if he'd be okay with that, and to my surprise, he agreed. He stuffed a piece of braised pork into his mouth. Thanks. Hichi was really smart. Even though he'd fallen behind in his studies, he was extremely quick on the uptake and had an excellent memory. He remembered almost every problem I explained to him, word for word. He could even apply what he'd learned to solve other similar problems. Tutoring him was easy, and the same Hichi, who would snap at anyone who annoyed him, was surprisingly well behaved when I was helping him study. Sometimes, when he came across a problem he couldn't solve, he'd spread his exercise book out in front of me, chew on the end of his pen, and ask me politely, "Miss Jo, can you give me a hand with this one?" Other times, when he felt the urge to smoke during our study sessions, he'd force himself to hold back, chewing on his pen so hard that it was covered in bite marks by the end of the night. And I discovered Hikai's secret. That hand fetish blogger I'd been following for so long. It was Hichi all along. I found out because he'd gotten into a fight with someone and hurt his hand. When I was bandaging his wound for him, I accidentally noticed a tiny light brown mole on the crook of his left thumb, exactly the same spot as the one on the blogger's hand. And during the 2 days Hikai's hand was injured, the blogger hadn't posted any new updates either. After being bombarded with messages from fans begging for new content, the blogger had finally caved and posted a lazy, half-hearted video just to satisfy everyone. But I'd noticed the hand in the video had a bandage on it, in exactly the same spot where Hikai's injury was. The night I made that discovery, I couldn't fall asleep for hours. Late at night, I picked up my phone and, pretending to be just another ordinary fan, left a quiet comment on one of his posts. "Blogger, I really like you." Of course, it was a comment that would never get a reply. The college entrance exam arrived right on schedule. To prepare for it, I de-studied like crazy during the second half of my senior year, waking up early to memorize vocabulary words, staying up late to work through practice problems. I wasn't a particularly smart girl. I could only succeed through sheer hard work and determination. All that studying took its toll and I ended up losing a few pounds. But because I'd been staying up so late, 2 pimples had popped up on my forehead. I'd lost weight, but I still wasn't considered good-looking by any stretch of the imagination. I sighed, splashed some cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. One more week. Just hold on for one more week. The night before the exam, Hichi posted a new video. The caption read, "College entrance exam tomorrow. I hope my girl soars high and achieves her dreams." I didn't know who his girl was. I just pretended to be one of his fans, like always, and left a sour little comment underneath the post. "Wah, bro, who's your girl?" On the day of the exam, I found out that I was in the same testing room as Gan Yu. Outside the classroom, she blocked my path, her voice dripping with the usual sense of entitlement. "Later, when we're taking the exam, you're going to show me your answer sheet." She lowered her voice so that no one else could hear. "When I kick your chair, you'll slide your answer sheet to the right. Got it?" She was sitting right behind me in the testing room. I pushed her hand away. "You're crazy. I'd studied for years for this exam. I would never help her cheat." But she just smiled, looking completely confident. "Joe Wu, don't forget, I have your private photos. If you don't help me during the exam later, I'll post them everywhere. I'll make sure you never show your face in public again." The words "private photos" sent a jolt of panic through my body. For 3 years of high school, I'd always been the one getting bullied. I'd tried fighting back before, but it had never done any good. When I told my teachers about it, they just covered for the bullies. And the harassment had only gotten worse afterward. I'd always been the outcast in the class. No one would ever stand up for me. Back in my first year of high school, I'd gotten into a minor argument with Gan Yu. After school, she dragged me into the girls' bathroom with a group of her friends. It was freezing cold that day, and they'd stripped off my clothes and dumped a bucket of cold water over my head. But I'd been too busy trying to cover myself up to notice that someone had been taking photos. I was pulled back to the present by the sound of Gan Yu's voice. I stared at her smug face, her chin held high as she looked down at me, so sure that she'd won. After all, this was about a girl's innocence and reputation. Even if I was ugly, I had to care about that, right? It was true. I did care. I fell silent for a few seconds, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill from my eyes. My vision blurred, and I grabbed her sleeve tightly, my voice trembling as I begged her. "Please don't post them. I'm begging you... If those photos get out, my life will be ruined forever." Gan Yu smiled. "Fine." She yanked her sleeve out of my grasp, then wiped the spot where I'd touched it with her hand, as if my touch had dirtied her clothes. "Then it all depends on your performance during the exam later. If you do a good job, I'll delete the photos right after the college entrance exam is over." "But..." "No buts." Her expression suddenly turned fierce. "The exam is starting soon. I don't have time to waste on you. Make your choice now." I hesitated for a moment and gritted my teeth. "Okay, ... But you have to be quick about it. This is the college entrance exam. After all... double quotes." "I know." She waved her hand impatiently. "Hurry up and go inside." The exam began. I pushed all thoughts of Gan Yu and her threats out of my mind, focusing on reading the questions carefully and filling in my answers. I was working on the last few problems when I felt someone tap my chair lightly from behind. Gan Yu was getting impatient. I pretended not to notice, keeping my head down and continuing to work on my exam paper. She grew more and more frustrated, kicking my chair repeatedly from below. She even took advantage of the moment when the 2 invigilators weren't looking to jab me in the back with her pen. But I ignored her completely, concentrating on my exam. I finished the entire paper with plenty of time to spare, and even went back to check my answers several times. After I handed in my paper, Gan Yu cornered me outside the testing room. "Jo Woo, did you do that on purpose?" She dragged me to the side, her face twisted with anger. "You promised me you'd slide your answer sheet to the right as soon as you finished." "I'm so sorry." I cut her off with an apology, putting on my most innocent expression. It was the first subject of the college entrance exam, and I was so nervous. The invigilator was staring at me the entire time. I didn't dare to do anything. "For the next subject, I promise I'll show you my answer sheet. I swear." Gan Yu stared at me for a long time, then finally nodded. "Fine. I'll trust you one more time. Jo Woo, you'd better not try to trick me again. If you do, I'll post those photos right away. Even if you score the highest in the entire province, you'll still be disgraced." I bit my lip hard, my eyes filling with tears as I promised her I wouldn't let her down. But that afternoon, during the second subject exam, I still didn't show her my answer sheet. After the second exam was over, Gan Yu was practically beside herself with rage. She cornered me in an alley on my way home, screaming at me, demanding to know if I'd been messing with her this entire time. I put on a look of wide-eyed innocence, my voice trembling as I held back my tears. "I swear I wasn't." The math problems on this year's college entrance exam were so hard. I was stuck on calculations the entire time. I didn't even finish the back half of the paper. "Tomorrow morning is the science comprehensive exam. Science is my best subject." I looked up at her, my eyes wide with fear. "I promise I'll show you my answer sheet tomorrow morning. I swear." Gan Yu stared at me for a long, tense moment. At a time like this, she had no choice but to believe me. "Fine. This is the last time I'll trust you. If you trick me again tomorrow, I'll post those photos everywhere immediately." I forced myself to hold back my tears and nodded. But the moment I turned around, I wiped away the fake tears I'd been forcing myself to shed. The next morning, during the science comprehensive exam, I still answered the questions earnestly and honestly. Halfway through the exam, she started kicking my chair lightly from behind again. The first time, I ignored her. The second time, I acted like I hadn't felt a thing. The third time, I raised my hand. "Excuse me, teacher. The student behind me has been kicking my chair repeatedly." The invigilator immediately walked over, warning Gan Yu sharply. For the rest of the exam, the teacher kept a close eye on our corner of the testing room. Gan Yu didn't dare to make another move. After the science comprehensive exam was over, even the most stupid person in the world would have realized that I'd been tricking her this entire time. Gan Yu had never been a particularly good student to begin with. She trusted me, the class nerd who'd always been too scared to stand up for herself. So much during the first two subjects that she hadn't even bothered to try answering the questions properly. As for the science comprehensive and English exams, I could tell that her mind had been completely messed up by then. There was no doubt about it, her already mediocre grades were completely ruined because of this year's college entrance exam. "Jo Woo, you're something else." She was waiting for me outside the testing room after I handed in my paper, giving me a slow, clapping motion with her hands. "Just wait for it. You're going to be completely ruined." She was talking about the photos, of course. I didn't say a word, just stared at her coldly as she stormed off. We'd been classmates for 3 years. I knew Gan Yu's personality inside out. Even if I'd given in to her demands and helped her cheat, she would have never deleted those photos. It was time for the last subject of the exam. On my way to the testing room, Chi walked beside me, glancing at me every now and then, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't bring himself to do it. I knew exactly what was on his mind. "You saw the photos, didn't you?" He fell silent for a moment, then nodded. I figured. I smiled faintly. I've had my phone turned off and locked in my desk drawer for 2 days now. I haven't checked any messages at all during that time. Chi said he was going to go find Gan Yu and make her delete the photos, but I stopped him. "It's okay. I don't want to get distracted right now. All I want to do is focus on finishing this last exam. After it's over, I'll handle it myself." Chi stared at me for a long time, then nodded. "Call me if you need anything. Anytime." "Okay." When I arrived at the testing room, Gan Yu was already waiting for me outside the door. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow, smiling like a triumphant victor. "Did you check your messages yet?" She laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. The other students are really interested in those photos of yours, Jo-woo. You've become famous all over the school. Tease-K. She clicked her tongue, shaking her head mockingly. Some people even said that we actually made you look kind of pretty in the photos. There are even boys who've been making bets about who is going to ask you out after seeing them. I forced myself to stay calm, saying nothing as I turned around and walked into the testing room. Ganyu followed me inside. The invigilators were already in the classroom, so Ganyu didn't dare to say anything else. I sat down at my desk, closing my eyes for a moment to steady my breathing and calm my mind. I'd worked so hard for so many years just for this moment. I wasn't going to let something as dirty and disgusting as this mess with my focus. I did extremely well on the last subject, so well, in fact, that I'd even exceeded my own expectations. Outside the school gate, after the exam was finally over, I borrowed Hikai's phone and dialed a number. Hello, yes. I want to report a crime. Ganyu walked out of the school gate, only to be immediately taken away by the police. I doubt she'd ever even considered the possibility that I would call the police. After all, she'd threatened me repeatedly, saying that if I dared to go to the authorities, she'd post the photos online for everyone to see. But I didn't care anymore. I was the victim here. I had no reason to feel ashamed about what had happened to me. For 3 years of high school, I'd worked tirelessly toward my goals, treating everyone around me with sincerity and kindness. I'd never done anything wrong, anything to be ashamed of. Those photos had been taken when a group of girls had bullied me, dragging me into the girls' bathroom, forcing me to strip off my clothes, and snapping pictures of me in nothing but my underwear, while I was too busy covering myself to fight back. The ones who should be ashamed were the bullies. The ones who should be ashamed were the people who laughed at those photos and made crude jokes about them. Not me. That night, Ganyu's parents came to our house to apologize. Ganyu had inherited her mother's good looks. Ganyu's mom looked very young, with a sincere expression on her face as she begged me to go easy on her daughter. She even hinted vaguely that if I withdrew my police report and agreed to a private settlement with them the next day, they would give me a very generous sum of money as compensation. Her eyes were red with tears as she pleaded with me, but I could see nothing but hatred and contempt in her eyes. There wasn't even a hint of remorse or guilt for what her daughter had done. Even when she mentioned that she was willing to give us 200,000 yuan in compensation, she held her chin high, her tone carrying a subtle note of condescension, as if she was doing me a favor by giving me her charity money. It was almost laughable. But before I could say anything, my mom's eyes had turned red with anger. She threw the two of them out of the house, grabbing whatever she could get her hands on and hurling it at them. I'd never seen her so angry before. She grabbed a rolling pin from the kitchen and threw it at Ganyu's mom, hitting her square on the shoulder. Ganyu's mom screamed in pain. The two of them fled from our house as fast as they could. After they left, my mum pulled me into a hug and cried for a long, long time. My mum had always been a gentle, mild-mannered woman. If anything, she was actually a little timid. I tried telling her about the bullying I'd endured at school before, but she'd only sighed and gently advised me to avoid conflict with my classmates, to not go looking for trouble, to take a step back and let things go. She told me to focus all my energy on my studies instead. So after that, I never told her about the times I'd been bullied again. But I didn't blame her. She was so busy, working day and night to support me on her own. She'd been spoiled her entire life, doted on by my grandpa when she was a child, then by my dad after they got married. She'd been the kind of woman who would burst into tears and seek comfort from others if she even scraped her finger. But after my dad passed away, she'd had to go out and find a job to support me, enduring countless hardships and humiliations along the way. Sometimes, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I'd hear her crying quietly in her room. My life goals had always been crystal clear. Study hard, get into my dream university, pursue further education, then find a good job, and take care of my mum. So even though those years of being isolated and bullied had been dark, painful moments in my adolescence, moments that sometimes still haunted me in my nightmares, they had never broken me. On the contrary, they had only strengthened my resolve to study hard and make something of myself. I knew I wasn't particularly smart, or particularly beautiful, or born into a wealthy family. I was just an ordinary girl, lost in the crowd. If I wanted to change my fate, I could only rely on myself. I don't believe in thanking hardships for making me stronger. But I do thank the girl I was back then. The girl who kept going. Who never gave up. Even when she was all alone. The college entrance exam results were released. I'd far exceeded my own expectations, jumping from my usual spot in the top 10 of the grade to becoming the #1 student in the entire school, even the top scorer in our city. The day I saw my score on the computer screen, I didn't say a single word, but tears streamed silently down my face. And I received another piece of good news a few days later. Gan Yu had been sentenced to jail time. She'd started school a little later than everyone else, and had even repeated a grade once. By the time she took the college entrance exam, she was already 20 years old. After an investigation, the police found that she'd forced me to take those private photos, using them to blackmail me and threatening to spread them around. Her actions have been deemed particularly malicious. In the end, she was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Gan Yu's mom was beside herself with grief and anger. She started spreading malicious rumors about me everywhere she went. Even though her daughter was in jail, she still hadn't learned her lesson. She even went around telling people that the only reason I'd gotten such a high score on the exam was because I was having an inappropriate relationship with the grade director. As the rumors spread, even the incident where I'd gone to the grade director's office to fight for my spot in the gala was dug up and twisted into evidence to support her claims. She told people that I was having an affair with the middle-aged grade director, who'd paid for my tutoring sessions and pulled strings to get me into the gala. She even went so far as to tell people that she'd seen me and the director entering a hotel together with her own eyes. Needless to say, the rumors got more and more absurd as time went on. This was a small town where gossip spread like wildfire. It only took a few days for everyone in town to hear the rumors about me. My mom was so angry that she wanted to go confront Gan Yu's mom, but I stopped her. Instead of going to her, I called the police, my voice trembling with tears. At the police station, I cried as I told the officers that a classmate's mother had been going around, telling people that she'd seen me entering a hotel with the grade director. She claimed to have conclusive evidence to support her claims, but I had absolutely no memory of any such incident ever happening. I asked the police if it was possible that I'd been drugged, which was why I couldn't remember anything about it. The next thing I knew, the grade director who was now at the center of the scandal and Gan Yu's mom were both brought in for questioning by the police. After an investigation, Gan Yu's mom was detained for maliciously spreading rumors and defamation. It wasn't a prison sentence, but it was enough to make me feel a sense of vindication. More importantly, it had effectively put an end to all those disgusting rumors about me and the grade director. Otherwise, it would have been such a shame for a man who dedicated his entire life to education, who'd lived an honest and upright life for decades, to be smeared with such a dirty scandal right as he was approaching his 60s. And the news that both mother and daughter had been arrested spread quickly throughout the town. The scandal had a direct negative impact on the business run by Gan Yu's stepfather, who was fairly well off. Enraged and humiliated by the entire incident, he'd immediately filed for divorce from Gan Yu's mom. I heard that after the divorce, she'd lost her source of income. And with her daughter in jail, she'd ended up living a very miserable, destitute life. My mom and I even ran into her once while we were out shopping. She was sitting alone in a small noodle shop, eating her noodles with a haggard, defeated look on her face. She was nothing like the arrogant, condescending woman who'd come to our house to beg for my forgiveness all those months ago. She did really well in the exam too. At least for someone with his usual grades, it was nothing short of a huge overachievement. We both got admitted to universities in City A, and our campuses weren't even that far apart. The day after the exam results came out, I received a message from a former classmate. She sent me a long, rambling apology essay. She admitted that she'd been one of the people who spread rumors about me and joined in the mocking during our 3 years of high school. She said that she'd never really meant to bully me. She was just an ordinary girl, plain-looking, average grades, introverted personality. She'd never had any particularly close friends. No matter how hard she'd tried to fit in with the group, her personality had always held her back, making it impossible for her to truly blend in. So she'd just gone along with the crowd. By joining in the mocking and bullying of me, she'd felt like she belonged to a little clique, a group of people on the same side. In truth, she hadn't even known why she'd mocked me. I wasn't the ugliest girl in the class, nor was I the fattest. But she'd known that if she didn't join the crowd, She might be the next ordinary girl to become the target of their mockery. She apologized to me over WeChat, hoping I could forgive her. I thought about it for a long time, then finally replied, "First of all, I wish you a bright future. Second of all, I do not accept your apology." After sending those 2 sentences, I deleted the contact information of everyone from my former class. Everyone except He-Chi. I might be able to understand why they'd follow the crowd to bully me back then, but I would never accept it. And I could never forgive them. If I hadn't gritted my teeth and fought my way through it all, I thought I would have long ago been crushed by that overwhelming tide of malice. The admission letters had just arrived when guests showed up at my house. If Li Chao's mom hadn't brought him over to visit, I would never have known that Li Chao and my family were actually distant relatives. Very distant relatives, mind you, so distant that it felt like we weren't related at all. They showed up at the door carrying a few bags of fruit, launching into the most cliched small talk imaginable. "Look how big Joe Wu has gotten. Truly, a girl changes fast as she grows up more and more beautiful every day. Do you still remember Auntie? When you were little, I even held you in my arms once. You were only a few months old back then, and you almost peed on Auntie's clothes." I smiled politely, saying nothing. After the awkward small talk was over, she cut straight to the chase. "Auntie heard you did incredibly well in the college entrance exam. That's why we're here. We want you to help Li Chao. This boy didn't do well at all. I'm planning to make him repeat his senior year." She glared at her son, giving him a sharp kick on the butt. "You two were in the same class. Look at Joe Wu's grades. Then look at your total score, barely over 100 points. You're such a disgrace to me." Li Chao bit his lip, refusing to say a word. Seeing this, Li Chao's mom kicked him again, this time on the leg. "Say something. Apologize to Joe Wu nicely and ask her to help you. Joe Wu is the top scorer in our district. Even if she just gives you a few pointers, it'll help you a lot." After being yelled at a few times, Li Chao finally looked up, his face dejected. "Joe Wu ... please ... help me." He sounded completely unconvincing even to his own ears. He knew exactly what I'd been through because of him. That was why he didn't even dare to look me in the eye when he spoke. I smiled faintly. "Help you with what?" Li Chao glanced at me, biting his lip. "Help me with my studies." He took a deep breath as if trying to save face, and added in a low voice, "I know I was wrong about what happened in the past. Anyway, just tell me what I need to do to make you agree to help me. I'll do it." When I still didn't say anything, he went on, "If that's not enough, I'll even write a diary entry. You can go read it out loud in public if you want." I took a sip of tea, suddenly amused by his words. "First of all," I said, "I have no interest in reading your diary, and I'm not low enough to do something as dirty and petty as reading someone else's private thoughts out loud in public. Second of all, on what grounds do you think I do want to take revenge on you in the exact same way you hurt me?" I held the teacup in my hand, finally able to say the words I've been holding back for 3 years. "I studied my ass off not to get even with people like you. I studied to get as far away from people like you as possible, so you can take that fruit back with you. I have no interest in humiliating you, and I will never agree to help you." Li Chao's face twisted with anger and resentment. He was about to say something more when I slammed my teacup down hard on the table. "Get out!" Li Chao's face fell at the sharp command. He was about to step forward when He-Chi walked out of the kitchen. He'd been helping my mom with the cooking, and he'd come out just in time. At 1.85 meters tall, he stood in front of me, blocking Li Chao completely from view. Hidden behind He-Chi, I couldn't see the expressions on the mother and son's faces, only hear Li Chao's mom muttering angrily under her breath. Then came the sound of the door slamming shut, and finally, there was silence. He-Chi turned to look at me. His hand landed on top of my head, and he instinctively ruffled my hair before quickly pulling it away again. "I have something to say to you." We spoke at almost exactly the same time. He-Chi touched the back of his ear with his hand. Those long, beautiful fingers I'd been secretly admiring for years. He raised an eyebrow. "You go first. Can you supervise my weight loss plan?" He-Chi froze for a split second. "That's it," I nodded. "What did you want to say just now?" "Nothing," He-Chi said, pressing his lips together. "I just wanted to ask, can Godmother make braised pork for lunch?" That's it. He said, scratching the tip of his nose. That's it. Hichi was a man of his word. When it came to keeping his promises, he was strict, ruthlessly strict. Without fail, he dragged me out for a run every morning and evening, and he even tied on my mom's frilly pink apron to cook all kinds of healthy, weight loss meals for me personally. 8 p.m. Hichi knocked on my door right on time. When I opened it, he was dressed in sportswear. Let's go downstairs. Hichi looked amazing in black. As I knelt on the floor to put on my shoes, I stole a glance at him, my eyes tracing the sharp lines of his face, lingering on his Adam's apple, then falling to the endless black of his clothes below. I thought to myself, if I'd met Hichi earlier, I probably never would have liked Pei Chuan at all. I was taking too long to tie my shoelaces, and a voice sounded above my head, urging me. Hurry up. Oh. I quickly tied the laces and followed him out the door. Hichi wouldn't let me take the elevator. He accompanied me down the stairs on foot. Then we ran laps around the neighborhood together. My stamina was nowhere near as good as his. When I was about to fall behind, Hichi grabbed my wrist. His voice firm. Just a little longer. One more lap. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to keep up with his pace step by step. Sweat soaked through my clothes. A summer breeze blew by, carrying away some of the stickiness on my skin. My gaze gradually fell to our clasped wrists. Hichi had the most beautiful hands. But compared to his face, his hands were almost mediocre. And compared to the person he was, even his face seemed unremarkable. Hichi was a man who never failed to surprise you. Unlike Pei Chuan, who was all surface and no substance, the more you got to know Hichi, the deeper you fell for him. For the last half lap, Hichi practically dragged me along. When we finally finished that last lap, my legs were shaking so badly I could barely stand. Can you help me walk back? Hichi laughed at me. He took a step forward and knelt down in front of me. Get on. Looking at that familiar broad back, I suddenly remembered that rainy morning at the school gate, when he'd carried me on his back across the puddles. I was about to awkwardly refuse when Hichi lost his patience. He reached out, pulled me onto his back in one smooth motion. He carried me steadily, his steps firm and sure. He adjusted his grip, lifting me a little higher on his back. You've lost weight. Really? I was overjoyed, but it wasn't enough. Besides losing weight, I also wanted to learn about skincare and fashion. During this vacation, when I no longer had to worry about schoolwork, I wanted to reinvent myself, not to compete with anyone, but just to become a better version of myself. Pleasing yourself was an important thing too. After carrying me for a while, Hichi suddenly asked, the reason you suddenly want to change, is it because of Pei Chuan? I heard he also got admitted to a university in City A. It's right next to yours. I rested my head on his shoulder, turning my face to the side so I could see his profile. The summer night was still a little stuffy. A thin layer of sweat glistened on Hichi's forehead. For some reason, I suddenly had the urge to trace the outline of his nose with my fingertips. The thought startled me, and I couldn't help but laugh. Guess. But Hichi didn't even try to guess. He said nothing, just carried me into the building entrance, not even putting me down when we got into the elevator. He carried me all the way to my front door. After setting me down gently, Hichi ruffled my hair. Go to bed early. I'll wake you up for a morning run tomorrow. 2 weeks before the start of the new semester. It was Hichi's birthday. I asked him over WeChat if his parents would be celebrating his birthday with him tomorrow. Hichi replied with a smiley face emoji. No. Then I'll celebrate with you. Okay. I asked Hichi how he wanted to spend his birthday, but instead of replying to my message, he called me directly. Hello? Even though I was in my own room, I still felt a little guilty and lowered my voice when I answered Hichi's call late at night. Hichi's voice came through the receiver. He laughed, the sound soft and low. Anyway is fine with me. I've never had a birthday party before. There was a long silence on the line, broken only by the faint click of a lighter on the other end. I snapped back to my senses, asking carefully, Your parents? They've never celebrated your birthday with you before. No matter how busy they were with work, they shouldn't have neglected their own child like this, right? Hichi laughed again. A hollow sound. Actually, I lied to you. He paused for 2 seconds. and I could almost hear him taking a drag of his cigarette. I don't have parents. My mom died in childbirth the day she gave birth to me, and my dad passed away in an accident 2 years ago. My birthday is my mom's death anniversary, so my dad never celebrated my birthday with me. He laughed, a bitter sound. Actually, the day we first found out we were neighbors when you were watching me in the hallway, I wasn't merely knocking on the door. I was just pretending, making it look like no one was home. I didn't know what kind of emotion I was feeling. All I knew was that my heart suddenly ached. A sharp, piercing pain. Hichi ... I whispered his name, but I didn't know what to say. After hesitating for a moment, I slipped on my slippers and quietly snuck out of my room. My mom was fast asleep. Clutching my phone tightly in my hand, I knocked on Hikai's door across the hallway. It took him a long time to come open the door. His eyes were a little red, and he still had a half-smoked cigarette between his fingers. He looked surprised, his voice soft with disbelief. Joe ... I slipped past him into the apartment. We'd been neighbors for so long, but this was actually the first time I'd ever been inside his house. Before, Hichi had always said that his mom was a clean freak, and that it would be inconvenient for me to come over. I'd understood and had never brought it up again. And since my mom was always busy with work, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night, she'd never thought it was strange that she'd never met our next-door neighbor. Hikai's apartment was spotlessly clean, but on the carpet, several empty soda cans were scattered haphazardly around. He'd been drinking alone. My heart ached for him. I took his hand and pulled him over to sit down. You were drinking alone and didn't even call me. Hikai's gaze drifted downward, landing on our joined hands. He hesitated for a moment, then didn't pull his hand away. He smiled faintly. I was afraid I'd be a bad influence on you. I tugged him over to sit down with me on the carpet. For some inexplicable reason, I kept holding his hand, not letting go. And he cheated and pushed me away. One of the soda cans on the floor was still open, half empty. I picked it up with my free hand and took a sip, tilting my head back. It was so cold. Come to think of it, this was actually the first time I'd ever drunk alcohol in my life. It wasn't bad, actually. I held the can in my hand, looking up at him. Happy birthday, Hichi. His gaze fell on my face, then drifted down to the soda can in my hand. I'd drunk from the same can he had. A realization hit me, and my cheeks suddenly turned red, a warmth spreading through my face. Hichi smiled, took the can from my hand, and tilted his head back, taking a big sip from the same spot where my lips had been. Our lip prints overlapped. This time, it really was an indirect kiss. He smiled at me. Thank you. He let go of my hand, popped open another can of beer, and handed it to me, adding in a soft voice, If you can't finish it, give it back to me. Don't push yourself. It seemed I had a very low tolerance for alcohol. After drinking just half a can of beer, my head was already spinning slightly. I propped my chin up in my hand, turning my head to look at him. Hichi. Wait, Chim. What kind of girls do you like? Hichi thought about it very seriously. So seriously that I began to suspect there was someone specific in his mind. Someone he was describing. After a long moment, he said in a low, soft voice, I like girls who are very resilient. They look soft and timid, making you want to protect them for no reason. But in reality, they don't need anyone to shield them from the storm. They have the strength to break free from anything that holds them back. They have clear goals and life plans, and they work tirelessly to achieve them. I laughed, clutching the empty soda can in my hand. That sounds exactly like me. Hichi turned his head to look at me, smiling faintly but saying nothing. What about you? Hichi asked, his eyes warm. What kind of boys do you like? I thought about it for a moment, then looked up at him, my voice earnest. I like boys like you. The smile in Hikai's eyes froze suddenly. He stared at me quietly. His expression didn't change at all, but the emotions swirling in his eyes were a storm of conflicting feelings. After a long moment, he finally snapped out of it, raising an eyebrow at me. Are you joking? No. Are you drunk? His long, beautiful hand reached out, brushing against my forehead to check my temperature. I pushed his hand away. The alcohol had numbed my inhibitions slightly, making it easy for me to say the things I'd never dared to speak aloud before. Is it that surprising that I like you? You're so good after all. Hichi was the best boy I'd ever met bar none. He was actually a very soft-hearted person, but he habitually hid that side of himself behind a lazy, indifferent facade. Hichi picked up a new can of beer, popped the tab open, and drank half of it in one go. When he spoke again, his voice was a little hoarse. Do you know what you're saying? I do. Drunk me was suddenly filled with a surge of courage. I pulled his hand over, pressing it against my face. I'm confessing my feelings to you. You don't believe me? I leaned in closer, placing both hands on his face and cupping his cheeks, then kissed him. I kissed him clumsily, my lips brushing against his. My tongue tentatively traced the shape of his lips. Hikai's body stiffened for a moment. Then he snapped back to his senses. A warm palm cupped the back of my head, pulling me closer to him as he deepened the kiss, taking control. Our breaths mingled together. A faint smell of alcohol hung in the air. Hikai's hand, which had been resting on the back of my head, stroked my hair gently, his long fingers threading through the strands. I was breathless from his kiss. When the kiss finally ended, I was practically melting in his arms. Hikai's hand gently pinched my cheek, his voice low and husky. No taking it back now. The drunkenness began to fade away. I buried my face in his chest, too embarrassed to look up at him. Only an idiot would take it back. Hikai's arms were so comfortable, warm and steady. So comfortable, in fact, that I fell asleep in his arms not long after. Hichi woke me up when the sky was just beginning to lighten. I was lying on the sofa, still wearing the same pajamas I'd had on the night before, covered with a soft blanket. Hichi looked at me, his eyes warm with amusement. If you don't go back now, Godmother will find out. I stared at him sleepily for a long time before it finally sank in. The boy in front of me was actually my boyfriend now. Mine. I blinked, a small, inexplicable sense of pride swelling in my chest. I was about to say something when I noticed the way Hichi was looking at me. His gaze was intense, heated. Sure enough, the next second, Hikai's hand cupped the back of my head. Just as he was leaning in to kiss me, I pushed him away and fled from his apartment as fast as I could. His breath smelled faintly of mint. He'd clearly already showered and brushed his teeth, but I hadn't even brushed my teeth yet. I slipped back into my room smoothly. Checking the time, it was barely past 5 o'clock in the morning. I was wide awake, completely unable to fall back asleep. As soon as I closed my eyes, the scenes from last night played in my mind on a loop. When I'd mustered up the courage to kiss him, fueled by the alcohol, I'd seen my own reflection in his warm brown eyes. I'd never seen myself look so beautiful before. And then later, Hichi had covered my eyes with one hand, plunging my vision into darkness, which only made all my other senses feel infinitely more intense. Just thinking about it made my heart race, my pulse pounding wildly in my chest. Unable to sleep, I picked up my phone and started scrolling through short videos. And then I stumbled across Hikai's official announcement video. As always, he didn't show his face. The video just showed 2 pairs of hands, fingers intertwined tightly together. The caption was simple, just 2 words. It's official. Pinned to the top of the comment section was a message from Hichi himself. I've waited for this for so long. This is the best birthday present I've ever received in my life. But that wasn't all. Somehow, he dug up the comments I'd left on his posts a long time ago and replied to every single one of them. My comment. Logger, I really like you. His reply. Thank you. But I really like you too. My comment. Wah bro. Who's your girl? His reply. Wah it's you. Some of his fans noticed the exchange and wailed in the comments below. Wah bro, you have no heart. Where's the cold, aloof guy we knew? Why are you wailing too now that you've met your girlfriend? I was still staring at the comments section in shock when my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Hichi. Can I ask for a birthday present? I quickly typed back. Yes, of course. Open the door. Open the door? I was confused, but I still got up and went to open the door. When I pulled it open, Hichi was standing outside. He leaned in, glancing briefly at the living room, then cupped the back of my head and kissed me quickly, his lips brushing against mine. He smiled at me. He used his thumb to gently wipe my lower lip. Thank you. With that, He turned around and went back to his own apartment, closing my door softly behind him. The start of the semester arrived in the blink of an eye. My mom wanted to come with me to City A to help me settle in, but she couldn't get time off work. But with He-Chi going with me, she felt completely at ease. What a coincidence it was. On the high-speed train, we were assigned to a row of 3 seats. I sat by the window, He-Chi in the middle. And right next to him, sitting in the aisle seat, was Pei Xuan. His university was also in City A. When we saw each other, we all froze for a moment. But Pei Xuan's reaction was the most obvious. He stared at me in stunned silence, his eyes raking up and down my body, the look of amazement on his face completely undisguised. During those 2 months of vacation, I'd worked tirelessly to improve myself. I still wasn't a stunning beauty by any means, but compared to my old self, I looked like a completely different person, a world of difference. Ignoring He-Chi completely, Pei Xuan started talking to me without any hesitation. "Zhou Wu, you've changed so much." I shot him a cold glance, saying nothing, but he didn't seem to notice my coldness at all, chattering away. "I heard you became the top scorer in our district. Congratulations. Our universities are so close to each other. We should hang out sometime." He-Chi, who was sitting between us, finally lost his patience. He raised his hand, pulling me into his arms and holding me tightly. He turned to glare at Pei Xuan, his eyes sharp enough to kill. "She's my girlfriend. Why the hell would she hang out with you?" Pei Xuan looked shocked that He-Chi and I were together. He glanced at He-Chi, then fell silent, not daring to say anything more. Halfway through the journey, He-Chi needed to use the restroom. Before leaving, he shot Pei Xuan a warning glare. Pei Xuan pretended not to see it, keeping his head down and staring at his phone. But as soon as He-Chi was gone, Pei Xuan held out his phone to me. On the screen was his WeChat QR code. "Zhou Wu, you deleted me." He sounded hurt, his voice laced with grievance. "Can you add me back? Our schools are so close we can look out for each other in the future." I turned to look at him, smiling faintly. "Sure. Unless you kneel down right now and wipe my shoes clean for me." I threw his own words back at him, word for word, exactly as he'd said them to me all those years ago. Pei Xuan's face darkened instantly. "Zhou Wu, that was all in the past. You should just let it go." He reached out, trying to take my hand. "I read that diary back then. I know how you felt about me." "Zhou Wu," he said, looking at me with a confident expression. "You're only dating He-Chi to get back at me, aren't you?" I almost laughed out loud in anger. But before I could retort, He-Chi came back. As long as He-Chi was by my side, no one could ever hurt me or make me feel uncomfortable. He-Chi snatched the phone right out of Pei Xuan's hand, slamming it down hard on the floor. Grabbing Pei Xuan by the collar, he dragged him roughly out of his seat. He didn't even punch him. He just kicked him hard, his voice cold and menacing. "Get lost. Find yourself another seat. If you dare to harass my girlfriend again, I promise you'll be carried into your university on a stretcher." Pei Xuan glared at He-Chi angrily, that there was nothing he could do. When it came to fighting, 3 of him wouldn't stand a chance against He-Chi. After hesitating for a moment, Pei Xuan had no choice but to pick up his phone and slink away in defeat. We never found out whether he de-upgraded to a first-class seat, or moved to a different carriage entirely. I thought that Pei Xuan, a scumbag with a pretty face, but an ugly heart, would disappear from my life forever after that. But I was wrong. Barely half a semester into my freshman year, I heard news about him again. Word had it that he'd used his handsome face to his advantage, quickly earning himself the title of department hunk. He'd gone through girlfriends one after another, cycling through them like they were disposable. But eventually, he'd messed with the wrong person. During his first semester of university, he'd started dating a senior girl from the journalism department, a sophomore. She was beautiful, with a bold and straightforward personality. Rumor had it that she'd been a well-known girl boss back in high school. But Pei Xuan, relying on his good looks and his so-called rich dating experience, had thought that this senior girl would be just like all his previous girlfriends, easy to manipulate, head over heels in love with him. And in truth, the senior girl had loved him deeply. So when she found out that Peichuan was a two-timing player who'd been cheating on her with 3 other girls at the same time, she'd been furious. She'd confronted him angrily, demanding that he cut off all contact with his other flings and be loyal to her. The senior girl had swallowed her pride and forgiven him for his betrayal, lowering herself to beg him to stay with her. But her desperate pleas had still been met with rejection. Peichuan had broken up with her casually, dismissing her feelings with a wave of his hand. Since they'd already torn off the pretense of civility, Peichuan had even been blunt enough to admit that he'd already found a new girlfriend, telling the senior girl not to bother him anymore. But he'd severely underestimated just how ruthless his ex-girlfriend could be. The day after they broke up, right at the university gate, the senior girl had pulled out a pair of scissors and attacked him directly. Her strikes were precise and ruthless. One single well-aimed stab had sealed his fate. The incident had even made the news. The scene at the university gate had been captured on camera by onlookers, and the photos had gone viral across several nearby universities. Word on the street was that Peichuan had been completely ruined permanently. After that incident, Peichuan had dropped out of university. Rumor had it that he'd gone back to his hometown to try his hand at doing business. But the most shocking part of the story was this. Word had it that the senior girl, who'd also been expelled from the university for her actions, had followed Peichuan back to his hometown. And the two of them had actually ended up getting together again. Although, from now on, the senior girl would never have to worry about Peichuan cheating on her ever again. A permanent solution to a permanent problem. These rumors had spread far and wide. No one knew for sure if they were true or not. But everyone who heard the story could only shake their heads and say one thing. Wow, that's ruthless. We had a wonderful relationship over the 4 years of college. We didn't go to the same university, but our campuses were close enough that he came to see me almost every single day. One summer evening, we ordered a whole table of crayfish at a restaurant. Summer crayfish just had to be paired with ice-cold beer to be truly satisfying. We drank a lot, and we talked a lot about everything and nothing. Somehow, our conversation drifted to the past. I pressed Hichi to tell me exactly when he'd fallen in love with me. He just smiled and refused to answer, telling me to guess instead. I thought about it carefully. Was it that time in the classroom when we accidentally kissed? Hichi shook his head. Earlier than that. Earlier? Then, was it when you beat up Peichuan for me behind the teaching building? Even earlier. I took a sip of beer, grinning playfully. Don't tell me you transferred schools just for me? He laughed. Not exactly. The first day I transferred, you tripped while running in P class. Everyone else was laughing at you, but Peichuan handed you a tissue. I saw the way you looked at him. Your eyes were practically sparkling with infatuation. My face heated up instantly, and I fell silent, looking away. From what I observed, he went on, you didn't even have the heart to use that tissue. You folded it carefully and put it away in your desk. But do you know what Peichuan said about it to the other guys? I shook my head, my curiosity piqued. He said it was just a crumpled, dirty tissue. He even bragged that he was sure you'd never dare to use it. Back then, my diary hadn't been exposed to the whole class yet. But Peichuan was the kind of guy who was used to girls fawning over him. He'd definitely noticed my crush on him. He peeled a crayfish while keeping his eyes on me. At that moment I just thought, this girl is so silly. I even debated whether I should go tell you the truth about him. I thought about it for days, but I never made up my mind. Instead, I found myself watching you more and more. And the more I observed you, the more I realized how different you were from everyone else. He dipped the peeled crayfish meat into the sauce, then pushed the plate toward me with a smile. He took off his disposable gloves, wiped his hands clean with a wet wipe, then leaned over and gently pinched my cheek. And for some reason, he said softly, I always thought you looked so soft and timid. I felt this overwhelming urge to protect you. Even though my JoJo is actually so strong, most of the time, you don't even need me to protect you. We weren't some naive new couple anymore. But for some reason, hearing him say all this still made my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Afraid he'd see how flustered I was, I quickly took a big gulp of ice-cold beer. But something felt strange. The cold liquid slid down my throat, but instead of sobering me up, the alcohol seemed to make my head spin even more. I stared at his long, elegant fingers, resting my chin in my hands and sighing dramatically. Look at these hands, long, strong, and so beautiful. It's such a waste to use them just for peeling crayfish. He froze for 2 seconds. Then it hit him. Without a moment's hesitation, he called the waiter over, asked him to pack up the remaining crayfish, and then put his arm around my waist, leading me to the cashier to pay the bill. I was definitely feeling the effects of the alcohol by then. I looked up at him, confused. Where are we going? Home? 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 City A is so far away from our hometown. Half an hour later, I finally understood what he meant by home. He'd taken me to a home-in hotel. We'd done this plenty of times before during our years of dating, but with the alcohol coursing through my veins, I still felt a flutter of nervous excitement in my chest. But Hichi didn't give me any time to overthink it. The moment the hotel room door clicked shut behind us, he set down the takeout box, then pressed me gently against the door, his body leaning close to mine. His lips crashed down on mine in a searing kiss. I wrapped my arms around his neck, kissing him back eagerly. No longer the shy, inexperienced girl I'd once been. The lights in the room were off. The darkness and the alcohol combined to heighten every single one of our senses, making every touch, every kiss feel more intense than ever. Hikai's hand slipped under the hem of my shirt, his fingers brushing against my skin. Out of nowhere, he asked me a question. What's your favorite poem? I was confused by the sudden change of topic, but I answered him anyway, my voice breathless from the kiss. As if the vernal breeze had come back overnight, adorning thousands of pear trees with blossoms white. It was such a fitting poem for the moment. A low, throaty laugh rumbled in Hikai's chest, right next to my ear. His fingertips traced gentle patterns on my skin as he murmured, "What a beautiful poem." His kisses fell on my neck, my jaw, my collarbone soft, lingering, and full of promise. His words held a double meaning, just like the line from another Tang poem. Her jade-like face, lonely in sorrow, tears streamed down like pear blossoms bathed in spring rain. From that night on, I could never look at those two poems the same way again.